Commander Zethkar of the Hegemony Survey Fleet had witnessed many strange phenomena across the galaxy, but nothing quite prepared him for the report that crossed his neural interface that morning. His secondary eyes dilated as he processed the data from the remote monitoring station on Kepler 442b, a backwater planet the humans had somehow managed to colonize despite its harsh conditions. "Sir," chirped his aide, a nervous Quillian whose feathers were perpetually ruffled around anything involving humans. "The Ecological Survey Team is requesting immediate intervention. They're reporting unusual behavior." Zethkar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. The humans had been on Kepler 442b for barely 50 standard cycles, yet they'd already managed to disrupt 3 separate ecosystems simply by existing. The Galactic Council had been very clear: observe, document, but do not interfere unless absolutely necessary. These peculiar bipedal mammals had a talent for turning necessary into inevitable. "Display the report," he commanded. The holographic display materialized before him, showing the sprawling savanna where the humans had established their settlement of New Nairobi. The planet's apex predator, the Kepler Jackal, a magnificent creature standing nearly 2 meters. Tall with bioluminescent fur and pack-hunting intelligence, had been thriving in this region for millennia. The Ecological Survey Team had been monitoring a particular pack led by a fierce matriarch the humans had dubbed Aquila. "Show me the incident footage," Zethkar ordered. The display shifted to show Aquila pacing frantically around her den, her pack members joining in agitated calls that echoed across the savannah. Her 2 cubs, barely old enough to hunt, were nowhere to be seen. The timestamp indicated this had occurred 3 solar periods ago. "Standard predator behavior," Zethkar mused. "Cubs wander. Parents search. Where's the unusual part?" His aide's feathers rustled nervously. "Sir, observe the human settlement during the same time period." The display split, showing the edge of New Nairobi where the prefabricated structures met the wild grasslands. Zethkar leaned forward, his compound eyes focusing on a small human dwelling where an elderly female sat on her porch, methodically working on what appeared to be textile repair. And there, curled up against the dwelling's foundation, were 2 juvenile Kepler jackals. "Fascinating," Zethkar whispered. "The cubs sought shelter with the humans?" "That's not the strange part, sir." The aide manipulated the display controls with trembling talons. "Watch this." The footage fast-forwarded to show the elderly human female. The databank identified her as Dr. Sarah Chen, xenobiologist and former university professor. Noticed the sleeping cubs. Zethkar expected her to flee, call for help, or at minimum, attempt to drive the dangerous predators away. Instead, she did something that made his exoskeleton tingle with bewilderment. She covered them with a blanket. "By the 7 moons," Zethkar breathed. "She's protecting them?" The surveillance continued to show Dr. Chen periodically checking on the cubs, leaving small portions of processed protein near them, and even constructing a makeshift windbreak to shield them from the planet's fierce dust storms. When other humans approached, she quietly guided them away from the sleeping area. "Sir," his aide continued, "the pack mother has been observed at the settlement perimeter. She's not attempting to retrieve her cubs. She appears to be waiting." Zethkar studied the footage of Aquila maintaining a respectful distance from the human dwelling, occasionally lying down, but never taking her luminescent eyes off the building where her cubs rested. The other pack members had formed a loose perimeter, not aggressive but clearly protective. "Have there been any hostile encounters?" Zethkar asked. "None, sir. In fact, the humans seem to have established some form of understanding. Dr. Chen has been leaving food at the perimeter, and the pack has been driving away the smaller scavengers that typically raid human waste disposal units." This was unprecedented. In all his years of galactic survey, Zethkar had never encountered a species that could establish such rapid interspecies cooperation without formal communication protocols. The hegemony's own first contact procedures took decades to establish basic trust. "Sir," his aide interrupted his thoughts. "There's more. The cubs have been sleeping by Dr. Chen's dwelling for 3 consecutive nights. Medical scans indicate they're both recovering from significant malnutrition and parasitic infections. Dr. Chen appears to have been providing medical care. The display showed Dr. Chen gently applying what appeared to be antibiotic gel to small wounds on the cubs, her movements careful and non-threatening. The young jackals accepted her ministrations with remarkable calm. "How is this possible?" Zethkar asked, more to himself than his aide. "The Kepler jackals are apex predators. Their bite force could snap a human in half. Their pack-hunting strategies have been observed taking down prey 3 times their size." "Perhaps," his aide suggested tentatively, "the humans possess some form of pheromone manipulation technology?" Zethkar reviewed Dr. Chen's personal file. Former xenobiologist, age 73 standard years, no military training, no advanced technology beyond basic medical supplies. She was, by all galactic standards, a fragile, elderly creature who should have been prey to the jackals, not their caregiver. "Access the human settlement's communication logs," he ordered. "I want to understand their perspective on this situation." The communication array tuned into the settlement's frequency, revealing a conversation between Dr. Chen and the colony administrator. "Sarah, you can't keep wild predators as pets," came a concerned male voice. "I'm not keeping them as pets. Marcus," Dr. Chen replied, her voice carrying a strange mixture of firmness and gentleness. "They're sick babies who needed help. Their mother knows where they are. When they're ready, they'll go home." "But what if the pack decides we're a threat?" "Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, these little ones need medicine. And rest. Would you abandon a sick child because you were afraid of its parents?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked in confusion. The human logic was simultaneously incomprehensible and oddly compelling. They were making themselves vulnerable to establish trust with creatures that could kill them without effort. "Sir," his aide reported, "new development. The cubs are stirring." On the display, the 2 young jackals were indeed awakening, their bioluminescent fur beginning to glow with the soft patterns that indicated health and contentment. They stretched, nuzzled each other, and then did something that made Zethkar's secondary heart skip a beat. They approached Dr. Chen. The elderly human sat perfectly still as the cubs investigated her, their sensitive noses exploring her scent, their intelligent eyes studying her face. Then, in a gesture that would be discussed in xenobiology classes for generations, the larger cub placed its massive head against Dr. Chen's shoulder. "Incredible," Zethkar whispered. "She's been accepted into their pack structure." The cubs then trotted toward the settlement's perimeter, their mother rising to meet them. But instead of immediately departing, Aquila approached the dwelling. Dr. Chen stood slowly, her movements careful and respectful. The massive predator studied the human for a long moment, then performed the jackal's traditional gesture of gratitude, a low bow with her luminescent markings pulsing in specific patterns. Dr. Chen, somehow understanding the significance, bowed in return. "Commander," his aide said quietly, "I believe we're witnessing something the xenobiology manuals never prepared us for." Zethkar nodded slowly. The humans possessed no advanced technology, no superior physical capabilities, no psychic abilities. Yet somehow, through simple acts of compassion and an inexplicable willingness to trust, they had accomplished what the galaxy's most sophisticated diplomatic corps had never achieved. Instant interspecies cooperation based purely on mutual understanding. As he watched the Jackal pack disappear into the savannah, the cubs healthy and the mother's debt acknowledged, Zethkar realized that the galaxy had much to learn from these strange, fragile, impossibly brave creatures called humans. Perhaps, he thought, courage wasn't about having the biggest weapons or the strongest armor. Perhaps it was about having the biggest heart.